It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. If you're an IU fan, your weekend was probably not as great as if you were a, Purdue fan. For me, my weekend was terrible. I'll tell you why. At some point during the show, you can probably tell if you're watching on stream based off of what I'm wearing. But, it's all good. Let's start with Oumar Ballo down there in good old Bloomington, Indiana. Look, Oumar Ballo is an established problem in a bad way. Sometimes kids now, they're like, that guy's a problem. And that's a good thing. Omar's a problem in a bad way. And it was on full display Friday night during that game. After the Miles Rice shot, he goes crazy in the huddle, goes after Miles Rice after the game. He didn't shake anybody's hand. Clearly an issue. Our guy, Oumar Ballo, is. Here's Mike Woodson after the game talking about Oumar Ballo not shaking hands and going after Miles Rice in that huddle.
Well, again, it's everybody's heated in the heat of the moment, and he didn't think it was a good play, and he voiced his opinion on it, which is okay. You just hope that you can learn from it and build on it and move on.
Mike Woodson, man, such an NBA coach response. He was upset. Everyone gets upset in the heat of the moment, which is true. I'm sure everyone in that huddle was pretty upset. Coach Woodson obviously not saying very much right there, which isn't surprising. It's an NBA coach move. It's like, it happens sometimes. We'll move on, even though I'm not too sure that you will. Everyone has to be upset with Miles Rice for that shot. And they should have been. It was an awful shot. An awful shot. Okay, like Miles Rice played 5 minutes in the second half. Only by necessity because Anthony Leal fouled out. It's the only reason why he was on the floor late in that game. He has to know that. He hadn't made a shot all night. He was just continuing to struggle. It was bad. And for him to take the ball up the floor and take that bad of a shot, Oumar Ballo was justified in being upset at that shot taken by Miles Rice. With that being said, you can't have a guy go after him in the huddle. Like you can't do that. You can't lash out in front of the 12,000 people in Mackey Arena. You can't do that. And the fact that Oumar Ballo knows that he can get away with it makes it pretty clear that Coach Woodson has absolutely no control over Oumar Ballo whatsoever. And it's also clear that Luke Goody has no control over Oumar Ballo. John, Luke Goody, what are you talking about? Well, after that loss to Maryland, Luke Goody grabbed Coach Woodson and he made him go shake their hands. He didn't do that to Oumar Ballo. He said, "See, Omar, catch you in the locker room." It's just a bad look. Oumar Ballo clearly just kind of does what he wants, which isn't surprising if you were listening to the Dan Dockett show last week. Oumar Ballo is the guy who tells Coach Woodson to F off in front of everybody. Of course, that's the guy who lashes out in the huddle and walks off without shaking hands and does all those things, even though the whole not shaking hands thing doesn't really bother me. I'll never forget this. I was listening to an interview with Paolo Banchero a few months ago. And during the interview, he was asked about why he had success at Duke. And he tells a Coach K story, because whenever you ask a Duke player, they always have some sort of Coach K story, and say whatever you want about Coach K, but that guy won a ton of games. Okay, Paulo talked about how Mike Krzyzewski sat him down early during his freshman year at Duke, like in the summer before school even started, sat him down early and told him he had to be the team's leader. He had to be the guy at the forefront. Coach K told him that if he is the best player on the team, wasn't the leader, then they weren't going to win very many games. And we're seeing the same thing happen with Indiana. Who are the leaders on that team? Probably Luke Goody and maybe Anthony Leal, which is problematic because the two best players on that team are Oumar Ballo and Mackenzie Mbaka, who played great. And when your two best players seem apathetic, they seem like they don't really care, they lash out at the coach in the huddle, and they do those things, your team isn't going to be very good. Simple as that. Oumar Ballo's a problem, and if they want to have any sort of chance at winning any of these next 3 games against pretty good opponents, then he's going to have to step up, and they're going to have to figure out all of his issues because they're going to continue to lose games until they figure that out. The game as a whole, Indiana could have won. They could have. They played almost well enough to win. I think that if you turn the basketball over 20 times, you probably don't deserve to win, but they scored 76 points in spite of that. It's the best that they've shot all year. Mackenzie Mbaka was their best offensive player, and that has to continue because he's clearly their most skilled player. He can shoot, he can score at all 3 levels. He can put the ball on the deck. If he gets fouled, he's going to make his free throws. So he had 25 on 10 of 17 shooting. So that has to continue. Trey Galloway played his butt off. It's the best game I've seen him play all year, even though he had 6 turnovers. Okay, which is way too many, obviously. But he played well. He made plays down the stretch. And usually if you made 6 turnovers, if you committed 6 turnovers, I wouldn't say that you played a great game. But then you hear what Coach Painter had to say after the game about Trey Galloway when talking about the plays that swung the game in Purdue's favor.
I thought they manhandled us a couple times at the rim. I thought they were quicker to the ball than we were. That was first and foremost. I thought Luke Goody had a big hand in the first half. He got away from us a couple times. At least one of them, maybe 2 of them, were spray out threes after offensive rebounds. But I thought he was a big player in that first half. Obviously, Mbaka has a huge game, and Trey Galloway was really good in the second half. But yeah, that was it. Trey had not really gotten to where he was working us downhill to his right hand like he did in the second half. So I was just talking about that, that adjustment wasn't in play, even though we understand that's where he wants to get. We wanted to keep him off his right hand, and we just did a poor job with it. I did a poor job with it. We should have been more prepared in that area. But, when you have a huge big guy like that roll into the basket and you stick shooters behind you in the outside, we made a living off of that, right? And you see Braden Smith play it, and that's what they did. They found Mbaka late for that 3, which was a big shot. Trey kept driving and getting fouled, getting the ball there, dumping down to Ballo. So they really had something, and Mike did a good job of just staying with it. And they really have something that was just working right there. We were just fortunate there at the end. Trey Galloway doesn't have the ball in his hands at the end. Let's just be frank about it, because he was making plays. And so now he doesn't have the ball there at the end, and then we were able to get a stop right there, and that was huge.
Coach Painter right there talking about the plays that swung the game, and I mainly want to focus on what he said there at the end about how they were fortunate that Trey Galloway did not have the ball in his hands because he kept making plays down the stretch. Once again, I don't like the fact that Trey Galloway turned the basketball over 6 times, but when the opposing coach is thankful that you didn't have the ball in your hands at the end of the game, I don't care how many turnovers you had, it means you played really well. Trey Galloway played well for the first time all year. For the first time all year, he had a direct impact on the game that you could legitimately feel. That is not the story of this game, though, even though it should be. If they'd won, it would have been. 5th-year senior Trey Galloway finally shows up in a big spot. But there are 2 things about this game that stick out that I have to discuss. One is Oumar Ballo. We already hit on that. Terrible teammate. Woodton's got to figure out some sort of way to rein him in. He's clearly an issue. The other thing is that final possession. That final possession. I was sitting up there in the stands with my boy Matt Murphy and my wife. Let's not forget about her. And oh man, they run that ball up the floor, and the whole crowd, you can just feel it. on pins and needles, just kind of waiting to see who for Indiana was going to make a play, because every time Purdue was about to break the game open, Indiana found a way to calm the crowd and to just kind of stay in it. It's the first time all year we saw them respond with just a little bit of toughness. And then Miles Rice races up the floor, takes a tough contested shot that he debatedly got fouled on, and it was just incredible. Coach Painter was asked after the game about that play from his perspective, and here's what the Purdue head coach had to say.
That's what you're hoping, like at that point, and he limits himself by coming up the side of the court so that you can load up a little bit, but he didn't get deep enough, with that drive. And so, you're on the move. So, like, you got to be able to guard him and to load up right there. And that was, like, for us, like, our concern in that situation would have been Trey Galloway. Like, that was who was torching us. Like, he was getting to the rim. He was making plays. He was the guy that was feeling it. And Mbako was just steady. Like, he was steady the whole game. I don't know, he ends up having 25, but he was, like, consistent. Had a good first half, had a good second half, and he really got it. So the guys that were getting us, don't have the ball in their hands. And so, like, now we want to keep that, and you're up against the clock. So we were, like I said earlier, we were very fortunate.
Coach Painter right there talking about that final possession, the ball not being in Trey Galloway's hands, who had been playing really well down the stretch, or Mbako's hands, who had played really well the entire game. Once again, he was Indiana's best player in that game on Friday night. And there it is again, Coach Painter making it abundantly clear that Indiana didn't have the ball in the correct player's hands. Trey Galloway didn't have it. And their best player Friday night, Mackenzie Mbako, who had 25 points on 10 of 17 shooting and 5 rebounds, didn't have the ball. Okay, Miles Rice wanted to be the hero, which I don't blame him. To hit a game winner in the IU-Purdue rivalry, like, that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. You would live on in infamy for forever. Like you would be, not a legend's probably a bit much, but you would be remembered for quite a while. You'd go back to campus. People would be dapping you up all over the place. It'd be awesome. But Miles Rice didn't do that. Instead, he made a terrible, terrible choice to take a tough contested jumper. Did he get fouled? I don't know, but I'm going to say he didn't get fouled because the ref didn't call it. He takes an awful shot, and Mike Woodson, I'm not going to say that he threw Miles Rice under the bus, but he talked about how he was trying to get him to call timeout. If you go back and you rewatch the game, it doesn't look like that. It looks like Mike Woodson's pushing them up the floor, but here's Mike Woodson talking about Miles Rice in that final possession after the game.
Couldn't get his attention, and, about time he got where he was going. I thought he got fouled on the play, but they didn't make the call. And I don't think that was the difference in the game. The difference in the game was the 20 turnovers that we had. I thought that was huge. And on the road, you can't turn it over like that. And they made us pay for it. They had 26 points off our turnovers. But for the most part, I thought our guys competed, did a hell of a job. But, it's about winning in this league.
Mike Woodson right there talking about that choice by Miles Rice to take a really tough shot right there late. And as Coach Woodson said, they didn't lose because Miles Rice took that shot. They lost because they turned the basketball over 20 times. Okay, and I know that there are some fans out there, I'm sure, because hindsight's 2020. They're like, why didn't Mike Woodson call a timeout? He had a timeout in his back pocket. I don't think that they should have called a timeout. So, well, Jonathan, why do you say that? I say that because do you remember what happened at the end of the Maryland game after they called a timeout? I wouldn't have called one because that debacle at the end of the Maryland game was way worse than the shot that Miles Rice took. Guys not knowing where they're supposed to go, and it was just bad. I'm glad that they did not call a timeout. I liked in that moment at least that they played through the chaos. Ball was just in the wrong person's hands. Miles Rice barely played in the second half. He only played 20 minutes compared to his normal 28 minutes per game, which is second leading on the team. He played 15 of those 20 minutes in the first half. He only played 5 minutes in the second half. And Mike Woodson talked about it a little bit after the game, saying it wasn't as much because Miles Rice was playing bad, but more because Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway were playing really well. Okay. But Miles Rice wasn't playing well, and the ball should have been in someone else's hands pretty clearly. Once again, I do not blame Oumar Ballo for being upset, as I'm sure that everyone was, but you can't go after your teammate in the huddle like that, especially when that's not the sole reason why you lost. You lost because you turned the ball over 20 times. You shot 9 of 16 from the free throw line, and you only won the rebounding battle by 6. That was the biggest advantage Indiana had going into that game on Friday night. They were bigger. I thought that they would pound Purdue on the glass, and that's exactly what happened in the first half. They had 8 offensive rebounds in the first half of that game, and it's why they won the first half 41-37. In the second half, Purdue out-rebounded Indiana by 1, but still, it shouldn't be even. Indiana should have pounded Purdue on the glass in both halves, but they only did it in the first. They didn't win the rebounding battle in the second. They only had 4 offensive rebounds in the second half compared to 8 in the first, and they lost the rebounding battle. And they were bigger at every position. There's no excuse for that. They won the first half 41-37 because they rebounded the ball well on the offensive end. And in the second half, they didn't have enough offensive rebounds to offset the turnovers that they committed. Okay, that is why they lost. Too many turnovers. They gave up 26 points off of turnovers. They didn't grab enough offensive rebounds, which is where their biggest advantage was, and they missed way too many free throws. Way too many free throws. Okay, Oumar Ballo can scream and yell at Miles Rice all he wants for taking that bad shot, but Oumar Ballo missed 4 free throws. He was 2 of 6 from the free throw line. If he makes his free throws, then Indiana, pretty decent chance at winning that game. If Oumar Ballo grabs a few more rebounds, Indiana has a pretty great chance at winning that game. But he didn't. And that's the thing about losing, right? Like there's always a couple plays that you can sit back and point at, especially when the game comes down to the wire like that. But a game is never decided by one possession. It never is. It's decided by all of them. So if Oumar Ballo grabs, a couple extra rebounds, if he makes all of his free throws, if Trey Galloway makes a couple more shots, Indiana probably wins that game. But they didn't. And everyone's going to sit back and scream at Miles Rice because he made an incredibly dumb decision. But that's not why they lost. They lost because they turned it over 20 times. They didn't rebound well enough. And they missed free throws. 3 things that if you want to beat a team that is better than you on the road, that you have to do those 3 things. You have to not turn it over. You have to rebound. And you have to make your free throws. Simple as that. More stuff on Purdue and IU when we come back here in about 4 minutes. Trey Kaufman-Renn, that shot he hit late, incredibly tough. I've got Coach Painter's thoughts on that. Purdue just continues to find a way. And this was also my first full experience at Mackey. My thoughts on it. Purdue fans, you're probably not going to like it, but that's okay. My thoughts on all those things when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube over at the Indy Sports Ticket YouTube page, which you should go subscribe to. It's free, by the way. You can watch there on YouTube. You can comment to be part of the conversation. You can also watch over on Twitter. Follow me there at __ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app. And today is a great day to listen because I just got a million and one things to talk about. Purdue, IU. And if you're watching on stream, I am wearing my Luka Doncic jersey because today's the last day it'll ever be worth wearing. We'll talk about that. RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas is set to join the show later on today. So Purdue, IU, I hit on all of the IU stuff. Sorry, Gritty. I know you're really disappointed that you missed that. Trey Kaufman-Renn, though. What a shot. Just what a shot from him. That shot from Trey Kaufman-Renn to win that game was stupid. Absolutely stupid. Okay, Braden Smith did everything that we thought he would do in that game. 24 points, 7 assists, 6 steals. You know, he pulled a Trey Galloway. He turned the ball over 6 times, which is way too many, especially for a junior point guard. But anyway, they won, though, not because of Braden Smith. They won that game because of Trey Kaufman-Renn. This is the second time this year where we've seen him show up in a big game and just utterly dominate. We saw it against Alabama, where Nate Oates, after the game, famously said, I didn't know that Trey Kaufman-Renn was that good. And then he does it in this game when Purdue desperately needs him. Purdue won that game because of Trey Kaufman-Renn. He dominated Oumar Ballo. He had 23 points on 10 of 13 shooting. He missed 3 shots. Oumar Ballo. You want to get mad and scream at Miles Rice? How about you get a stop on Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's a whole head shorter than you are, and giving up like 30 pounds to you? And I'm being nice by saying 30 pounds. Okay, Trey Kaufman-Renn made all of his free throws. Oumar Ballo didn't do that. Okay, he went at Oumar Ballo in that second half, and he dominated. He got whatever he wanted. When Purdue had the ball with an opportunity to put the game away, to take the lead, everyone in that building should have known that they were going to Trey Kaufman-Renn, that they were giving him the ball on the block, and they were going to let him go one-on-one with Oumar Ballo because you knew he was going to score because he'd done it the entire night. He ends up taking a hook shot from the free throw line. Like, he went up to shoot it, and I was like, this is a bad shot. This is not going in. If he was, 5 feet closer, I'd feel great about the shot. But he wasn't. He was at the free throw line, and it goes in. Don't even think it hit the rim. It was just such a tough shot. He makes it. Crowd goes crazy. And, the sideline for Purdue went crazy. Here's Matt Painter after the game talking about the shot that Trey Kaufman-Renn hit and just Trey Kaufman-Renn in general.
That wasn't clean. And so, we come off of it and they stick us and they play good defense right there. And we wanted to throw back and just go in and have a deep post up, and that wasn't. We were very fortunate there. Trey makes a great play, but give Indiana credit because they pushed him out and made him make a tough, 15-foot jump hook. And he's a good player. Trey's a good player. He needs to come set on a screen so we can play him the whole game. Look at the box right there. He's a plus 21 in 26 minutes. He doesn't have those 2 fouls. We don't take him out. How does that adjust the game when we have a place to go with the basketball and to make them play? Because the one thing that you want is you want to play off of Braden Smith and you want to play off of Trey Kaufman-Renn. Now it really brings value to other players that can shoot the basketball. But now when you're just playing off of Braden and you don't have a post-up guy there, that makes it a lot harder on us.
Matt Painter right there talking about Trey Kaufman-Renn and just how dominant he was, talking about how the plan at the end of the game was just to get him the ball. The most interesting thing, though, from that clip for me, and the thing that I think separates Purdue from Indiana is early on, the first thing that he says when they ask him about that set and getting him the ball, the response is pretty simple. It wasn't clean. What they wanted to happen didn't happen the way that they wanted it to. They wanted to get Trey Kaufman-Renn the ball on the block, matched up with whoever. I don't think it mattered who he got matched up on. They just wanted to give him an opportunity to go and make a play. But it wasn't clean. The post entry pass wasn't great. They pushed him out away from the bucket, and it didn't matter, which is the difference between Indiana and Purdue. It didn't matter that it wasn't perfect. They still found a way to win. Okay, Indiana is more talented than Purdue. Okay, the difference is that things don't have to be perfect for Purdue. They just figure out ways to score. They made 2 threes. They made 2 threes all night, and they still scored 81 points. Indiana shot the ball better from the field than Purdue at 57%. They shot 37% from 3 to Purdue's 15%. And Purdue still figured out a way to outscore them. Even though that final play wasn't perfect, Trey Kaufman-Renn found a way. And that is what this Purdue team is. They just find a way to get things done, even when things aren't going perfectly for them, because they're tough. Indiana, they don't do that. Things have to be perfect for Indiana for them to win. And if they aren't, then they're going to lose. They shot 37% from 3, 57% from the floor. And they didn't win because they didn't make free throws. It didn't go perfectly for them. They didn't play a perfect game. Purdue, they didn't play close to a perfect game. Once again, 15% from 3. Okay, this is a Purdue team that going into that game was second in the Big Ten in three-point shooting. The ability to knock down jump shots from the outside is a major part of that Purdue offense. And they weren't falling at all on Friday night. But they monitored, they adjusted, and they found a way to win. Indiana, haven't seen them do that really once in the Mike Woodson era. The other difference is Purdue just does all the little things. That's what allows them to stay in these games when they shoot 2 of 13 from 3. They made free throws. They shot 75% from the line as a team. Okay, they rebounded their butts off in the second half, out-rebounded Indiana by 1, even though they were the much smaller team. They only turned the basketball over 10 times to Indiana's 20. They committed 7 less fouls than Indiana. Kept them out of the bonus or the double bonus. I mean, it's just a really impressive, gritty win from Purdue. Now, I've been to games in Mackey Arena before. Never against, great teams. Never in any, awesome games. It's like game 3 of the season when they're playing. I don't really care. University, I just kind of want something to do on a Saturday. So, Amelia, my wife who graduated from Purdue, will go up there with, her parents, and we'll watch a game, and Purdue usually wins by 20. And this is my first time in Mackey Arena where they're playing like a legitimate opponent. And I'm excited because the paint crew is awesome. Their student section is rocking and rolling, and it got loud, but I had to be honest. I can't pander. I don't want to pander. Mackey Arena was a good environment, but I've been in better. Okay, like I have been. Okay, Mackey Arena, it got loud. There were some great moments, but it wasn't Bud Walton in Fayetteville, Arkansas, to be clear. Also, go Hogs. Way to go into Lexington and beat Kentucky fans. Made my day. And, throughout the game, like there were moments where Mackey obviously got loud. Every run, that they made when they come out in the second half and they go on that run to take the lead. And I think they got up by as much as 5. And then Indiana calls the timeout. It was loud. It was good. But it felt like every time Purdue was or Mackey Arena was about to go to just another level of being loud. Like you could feel the temperature rising and it's just getting a little louder and a little louder. Indiana made a play. Indiana made a play to stop the run and to get back in the game. Mainly that player was Mackenzie Mbaka, who once again played just an awesome game. 25 points, 10 of 17 from the floor. Dude's a beast. And, it got loud. And I remember Trey Kaufman-Renn hitting that hook shot from the free throw line to put them ahead with 11 seconds to go. That was the loudest it got, and rightfully so. He hits that shot. Everyone goes crazy. And once again, it got loud. I'm not saying the Mackey Arena is not loud. It's a great environment, okay? Tough place to go in and win, clearly. I will say, though, I've been to Bud Walton Arena. Best game I've been to is when Arkansas hosted Kentucky, I believe 5 years ago. No, because this was it was right after COVID, and buildings had just opened back up, and you could go in and watch games. And I'll never forget sitting in that arena and Coach John Calipari getting tossed from that game as the head coach of Kentucky. Got so loud in that building that I went deaf for 5 seconds. It was so loud, I couldn't hear anything, if that even makes sense. And the closest moment to that, in my experience on Friday night, was when Trey Kaufman-Renn hit the shot with 11 seconds left to put them up by 1. He hit that shot. It got loud. Please don't understand what I'm saying. Mackey Arena, awesome. It got loud. But it wasn't so loud that I went deaf for 5 seconds like it did in Bud Walton on that, Tuesday night or whatever night of the week it was when Coach Cal got tossed. And yeah, so Mackey Arena, great environment. I had a great time. Big shout out to my good friend, Matt Murphy, who's been on this show before. And for who's Matt Murphy? He's the guy who looks like Logan Paul, according to some of you. So great environment. I had a great time. Purdue fans were great. The people that sat around us were awesome, but it's not Bud Walton. It's not Bud Walton. Something else that's not that, isn't great. Luka Doncic getting traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Of all places, the Lakers just continue to be the luckiest franchise in all of sports. Okay, they luck into this trade. Let's just go through the trade history of the Lakers. Philadelphia traded Wilt Chamberlain to the Lakers after winning a title, if I remember correctly. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, in the decade that he won 6 MVPs, got traded from Milwaukee to the Lakers. Shaquille O'Neal was traded from the Magic to the Lakers. They traded with the Bucks to acquire Kobe Bryant on draft night. LeBron James goes to them in free agency. And then Saturday night, sitting down, I'm soaking in the win from, Arkansas beating Kentucky, Coach Cal winning his return to Rupp Arena. And my phone buzzes. I get a text from one of my best friends, and it just says the word Luka. I was like, what does that mean? So I go to Twitter. I see the Shams tweet. I think he got hacked. He didn't. And from there, from that point forward, from the moment that I realized it was real, my Saturday night went from this awesome experience of Arkansas beating, the Wildcats on the road to crap. The second best basketball player in the world on my favorite team, to be honest, just got traded. It ruined my weekend. That's a bit dramatic, but it greatly affected my weekend. And Nico Harrison, the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks, will be fired in the near future. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. You say, yeah, well, of course, he traded Luka, that seems like a pretty fireable thing. That's not why he's going to get fired. I'll tell you why he's going to get fired when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unfiltered takes live here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. I did not, to be honest with you. You know, IU fans, you and I, we have something in common as of right now. You know, Friday night, IU fans, your heart was probably ripped out when Miles Rice took that horrific shot to try to win the game against Purdue, and it probably bothered you for a little bit. My heart was ripped out, you know, Saturday night when my favorite NBA team, the Dallas Mavericks, traded the second best basketball player on planet Earth for nothing. And Nico Harrison, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he made that trade. And I was just distraught afterwards. I was so upset. I couldn't sleep. I was up till past 2 a.m. just like sitting there, just staring at the ceiling, just being like, what just happened? And a lot of the basketball world had the exact same reaction of, what is this? Why would they do this? And Nico Harrison is going to lose his job. Who is Nico Harrison? Nico Harrison is the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, and you know, he's going to get fired. And I say that, and you're like, well, duh, just traded Luka Doncic. But here's the thing, right? That seems very obvious. Like, he just made one of the worst trades in the history of sports, not just the history of the NBA, but in the history of sports. But that's not why he's going to be fired, right? Because they're bringing in Anthony Davis. They're going to be a good basketball team. Okay, they're going to be better defensively. They're going to be bigger. They still got Kyrie Irving. The hope is that he and Anthony Davis will kind of lead the charge for the Mavericks. They're still going to win games. They think that they can compete for a championship this year. I don't think that they can, but they'll probably make the playoffs. Maybe win a series, maybe two. Maybe they get back to the Western Conference Finals where they run into the Thunder and they lose because they just don't have the offense to beat those teams. And I say all this, you say, well, Jonathan, if the Mavericks are still going to be good, despite not having Luka Doncic, why would he be fired? Nico Harrison will be fired because he devalued the franchise. These owners are business people. When they buy an NBA team, their goal is to do what Mark Cuban did. Mark Cuban bought the Dallas Mavericks a long time ago for $285 million. A lot of money. A lot of money. And he sold the team, sadly, because if Mark Cuban was still the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, this would not have happened. He sold the team for $3.5 billion. And when he sold the team for that much money, he also shipped Luka off to LA, apparently. The goal of the people that buy these basketball teams is to make a profit. Okay? Luka Doncic, in and of himself, is a global brand. He alone made the Dallas Mavericks way more valuable. A decent comparison. I don't think it's a great one. When Lionel Messi went from playing in Europe to playing at Inter Miami, the value of that franchise skyrocketed because Lionel Messi is a global brand that everyone across the world knows exactly who he is. Is Luka Doncic as big as Messi? Absolutely not. But in the two places where basketball is the biggest deal, America and Europe, yeah, he's kind of a big deal. He raises the value of the Dallas Mavericks. I promise you that if the Dallas Mavericks hadn't had Luka Doncic when Mark Cuban wanted to sell the team, it would not have gone for $3.5 billion. They wouldn't have gone for that much. Luka Doncic raised the value of the Mavericks. He made the Mavericks a more valuable asset. Teams like the Lakers, the Celtics, the Knicks, they don't need Luka Doncic to be a global brand. The Dallas Mavericks do, though, because they're a football town. And they had that in Luka. Then Nico Harrison decides to be idiotic and trade that away. The Dallas Mavericks went from 5.3 million followers on Instagram to 4.6 million followers. That's 700,000 people who now no longer care about the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks are worth less today than they were on Friday night. Okay, the value of the franchise just plummeted. Dallas is a football town. And the most famous athlete in that city was Luka Doncic. You know how hard that is? Like for the Mavericks, like they had Dirk Nowitzki, who when he retired was the 6th all-time leading scorer, scored 30,000 points, came in from Germany. And Tony Romo was a bigger deal in that city than he was. Okay, and finally they've got this guy in Luka who, was the face of that city. The most popular athlete in that city was Luka. And the other thing for me that doesn't make a ton of sense with this trade is that Dallas is the 4th largest market in the country. Okay? The 4th largest market in the country. And when you have that big of a market and you're in a city like Dallas, you have to have something worth watching. Because if you don't, I'm going to go do something else. It's why you see it's why you see teams in LA make these types of trades. It's why the Dodgers traded for Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and all those guys, because they know that being in LA, if they aren't very interesting, if they don't have a ton of stars, people aren't going to go to watch the Dodgers play. That's why the Rams went and got Matthew Stafford, because they know that if they aren't competing for Super Bowls, the people are going to spend their Sunday afternoons not at the stadium, not watching them play. They're going to go off and do something else because there's a billion things to do in LA. Okay, if you are not awesome in a big market, then people will not show up and it will impact your bottom line. The Dallas Mavericks just got rid of their biggest moneymaker. Luka Doncic was 8th in jersey sales through the first half of the season. And the new face of their team is Anthony Davis, who's not even in the top 15. Yes, the trade that Nico Harrison made was malpractice, but he's not going to get fired because of that. He's going to get fired because he greatly devalued the franchise. And he likely won't find another player in his near future who's as exciting or as good as Luka Doncic is. Speaking of the trade itself, it's malpractice. It's terrible. You got the second best basketball player on the planet, and you give him away for 30 cents on the dollar. Okay, so for those who haven't seen the trade, Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris are going to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. The Jazz are also involved. Jalen Hood-Schifino going to Utah. Maybe he'll turn them around. We'll see. Luka Doncic is at worst the 3rd best player on the planet. He just dragged an average Mavericks roster to the NBA Finals through a tough Western Conference last season. And all the Mavericks got back for Luka was a 31-year-old Anthony Davis who has issues staying on the court, a guy who on average plays 35 games a year. For reference, Luka Doncic averages playing about 65 games a year. They also got, the Mavericks did, a role player in Max Christie and a single first-round pick in 2029. For comparison, here are some other trades that have happened recently. Yesterday, the Kings got Zach LaVine, 3 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks for De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox, good player. Not as good as Luka. Last year, the Minnesota Timberwolves got Rudy Gobert for 4 first-round picks, Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leonardo Bolmaro, and Walker Kessler. Really, they got a pick in the 2022 draft, and they took Walker Kessler and Jared Vanderbilt. Those are just 2 examples. Here's another one. Mikal Bridges went from the Nets to the Knicks for 5 first-round picks. 5. Mikal Bridges, really good player. Really good player. De'Aaron Fox, good player. Really going to help the Spurs be good right now. Rudy Gobert, solid player. But all 3 of those guys are nowhere close to how good to how good Luka Doncic is. And I get some of the concerns. I get that Luka's not in shape and he doesn't play defense. The Mavericks probably didn't like that Luka Doncic was drinking a beer right after they won the Western Conference Finals and they were going to the NBA Finals. There's that famous video where Luka's like sipping a beer, talking to his dad, and some guy for the Mavs walks up and takes the beer from him and walks away. And Luka's like, what are you doing? I'm just going to go grab another one. I get that he doesn't play defense. Okay. Like he really struggled against Boston, but newsflash, everyone struggled to play defense against Boston last year. Okay. I get it. He's not in shape and he doesn't play defense, but he took you to the NBA Finals last year in a loaded Western Conference. And here's the other thing. A player being out of shape should not justify trading them, especially when they're available. Once again, Luka Doncic, on average, plays 65 games a year. Like, I would understand it, if the 76ers wanted to trade Joel Embiid because he's not in shape and he doesn't play. And I would understand it if the New Orleans Pelicans wanted to trade Zion Williamson because he's out of shape and he doesn't even play. But Luka Doncic at least plays in the games. Okay? Zion Williamson has been out of shape and injured his entire time in New Orleans. In fact, he's so out of shape and he's so injury prone that the New Orleans Pelicans do not allow him to play in back-to-backs. They don't allow it. And the Pelicans won't even consider moving him because Zion Williamson's a very special talent. Luka Doncic should have been in the same boat. Such a special talent that you do not trade them no matter what their flaws are. No matter what their flaws are. Okay? It's malpractice on the part of the Dallas Mavericks. And yeah, it's malpractice. There's no other way to really put it. And people are going to label this as the biggest trade in NBA history. I don't know if I'd say that. Like, Shaq did get traded. Wilt Chamberlain did get traded. Allen Iverson got traded after making the finals with the 76ers. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he got traded in a decade that he won 6 MVPs. So is this the biggest trade ever? I don't know. This is the most shocking trade ever. No one saw it coming. Not even the teams. Like, none of the other NBA teams had any clue that this was going to happen. Which that's the biggest mistake in all of this. Like, start a bidding war. Seriously, start a bidding war. Call, the Lakers and be like, we want Anthony Davis and all of your first round picks. As many as you have, and we want all of your pick swaps. And if the Lakers are like, nah, we're good. Then you say, okay. And then you call the Spurs and you say, hey, San Antonio, we want all of your picks and we want Stephon Castle, the number 4 overall pick in this recent draft class. The Spurs would have done it like that. Because the opportunity to pair the opportunity to pair Luka Doncic and Victor Wembanyama, they wouldn't have passed up on. They wouldn't have. And so it's just malpractice on the Mavericks' part. The fact that they only talked to one team. The fact that they didn't give anyone else any sort of opportunity to give a counteroffer. They didn't start a bidding war. They didn't do anything like that. And I'm sure that there's more to this story than what we're getting. It doesn't seem like Luka Doncic was unhappy. He didn't know that he was being shopped. LeBron James apparently didn't know that he was being shopped or that this was going on. But like, something extra has to be going on here. It's got to be more than just he's overweight and he's not very well conditioned. Once again, he took you to the freaking NBA Finals last year. That's incredibly hard to do. It's hard to even get there, let alone win it. And he did it with a not so great roster around him. And then they make all these moves in the offseason to bring in, Brent Grimes and Najee Marshall. And then they're like, too bad. See ya. Let's bye, Luka. There's got to be something deeper here. Hopefully it gets reported soon because I'm just absolutely baffled that the Dallas Mavericks would do this. When we come back, here in about 4.5 minutes, more stuff on IU and Purdue. May touch a little bit on the De'Aaron Fox trade as well. RJ Choppy from Dallas is set to join the show coming up here at about 11:20, where we're going to talk the Mavericks trading away the second best basketball player on planet Earth. That's at 11:20, but more stuff on IU and Purdue when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Oh, man. I'm not. The Mavs trained Luka. And to the Lakers, of all teams, like, trade him to somewhere, not great. Like, trade him to the Nets. Somewhere where I don't have to watch him in that ugly purple. I hate the Lakers. Anyway, okay. Indiana fans, you're sharing in my sorrow because, they lost to Purdue, which is not fun. It's not fun when you lose to your rival. And, Oumar Ballo is a major issue for Indiana. We learned this last week. Dan Dockich with the inside scoop. Apparently, Ballo has told Mike Woodson to his face in front of the team multiple times to F off and he'll walk out of practice when he doesn't feel like running and just a lot of issues. And Oumar Ballo was once again a problem on Friday night, and not in a good way. Kids will be like, "Oh, he's a problem." Yeah, no, not in that kind of way. He went after Miles Rice after Miles Rice took a really bad shot to try to be the hero and to try to win that game. And Indiana ends up losing. Oumar Ballo didn't shake anyone's hand. Shout out to Trey Kaufman-Wren for getting out of the line and dapping Oumar Ballo up before he could get to the locker room. I thought that was so funny. I found it to be incredibly petty on Trey Kaufman-Wren's part, which I think is a good thing. Maybe, now maybe it wasn't sincere. That was his matchup and all those things. But the fact that he got out of line to go dap him up, I just found incredibly funny. Here's Mike Woodson after the game talking about all of the Oumar Ballo crap.
Again, it's everybody's heated in the heat of the moment, and he didn't think it was a good play, and he voiced his opinion on it, which is okay. He just hoped that you can learn from it and build on it and move on.
Mike Woodson right there talking about, Oumar Ballo after the game being upset and storming off the court and going after Miles Rice and all the other things that he did. And look, Coach Woodson didn't say a ton there, which isn't surprising. Very NBA coach of him. He's upset. It happens, all that kind of stuff. And I guarantee you that Oumar Ballo wasn't the only guy in that huddle that was upset with Miles Rice. And everyone should have been upset with Miles Rice. It was not a good shot. It was a bad shot. He pushed the ball up the floor, took a tough contested two, didn't pass the ball to anybody. He'd only played 5 minutes in the second half. You got Mackenzie Mbako and Trey Galloway on the floor, both guys who had played really well. He didn't give the ball up. And so I understand being upset. With that being said, you can't go after the guy. Like, you can't go after a guy while you're in the huddle. That just can't happen. Okay, it's clear that Coach Woodson has no control over Oumar Ballo. None whatsoever. Telling him to F off, going after Miles Rice in front of Woodson and the rest of the staff, walking off the court at the end of the game without shaking hands, which doesn't bother me, but, whatever. It's clear that Luke Goody has no control over Oumar Ballo. If he did, then he would have made him shake hands with Purdue like he did to Coach Woodson against Maryland. Okay? Oumar Ballo clearly just kind of does what he wants, and everyone associated with that basketball program lets him get away with it because they know that they can't win without him. Okay? I will never forget this. Paolo Banchero did, and he did this interview one time, and I remember going back and listening to it, and he told this story about Coach K. And look, say what you want about Coach K, but he won a lot of games, all right? And Paulo talks about how before the season even started, it was like after their second or third practice, Coach K grabs him, calls him into his office, sits him down, and just kind of lays it out. He goes, "You have to be our main leader. You have to be the guy, okay? Because you're going to be our best player." Coach K told him that if he, as the best player on the team, was not a good leader, then they were not going to win games. And we are seeing this on full display with Indiana. Oumar Ballo and Mackenzie Mbako are the two best players on that team. Not a doubt in my mind about it. Mackenzie Mbako seems apathetic's not fair, but he seems like he's just kind of out there for himself. You know, if he's not scoring, then he seems pretty disengaged. Oumar Ballo, I mean, going after Miles Rice, telling Coach Woodson to F off, all those things, it's not great. Like, their two best players are not good leaders. Meanwhile, you know, guys like Luke Goody, look, you can try to be a leader all you want to. You know, Goody and Leal and, you know, all the other walk-ons, whatever. But if your best player is not bought in, then it simply does not matter. And what's frustrating is Indiana could have won this game. They scored 76 points despite turning the ball over 20 times. It's the best that they've shot all year. They shot 57% from the floor, 37% from three. Mackenzie Mbako was everything that he was supposed to be. He was their best offensive player, 10 of 17 from the floor, 3 of 8 from three. Finished the night with 25 points. He was just consistent. It felt like every time he touched the ball, Indiana was going to score. Trey Galloway finally played well, played his butt off. It's the best game that he's played all year, even though he had 6 turnovers. And usually if you commit 6 turnovers, I'm not going to say that you played very well. But when the opposing coach says something like what Matt Painter said after the game, then I have to say that you played well. Listen to this clip, specifically the end, when Coach Painter talks about Trey Galloway late in that game.
I thought they manhandled us a couple times at the rim. I thought they were quicker to the ball than we were. That was first and foremost. I thought Luke Goody had a big hand in the first half. He got away from us a couple times. At least one of them, maybe 2 of them, were spray out threes after offensive rebounds. But I thought he was a big player in that first half. Obviously, Mbako has a huge game, and Trey Galloway was really good in the second half. But yeah, that was it. You know, Trey had not really gotten to where he was working us downhill to his right hand like he did in the second half. So, like, I was just talking about that, like that adjustment wasn't in play, even though we understand that's where he wants to get. We wanted to keep him off his right hand, and we just did a poor job with it. I did a poor job with it. We should have been more prepared in that area. But, you know, when you have a huge big guy like that roll into the basket and you stick shooters behind you on the outside, like we've made a living off of that, right? And you see Braden Smith play, and that's what they did. They found Mbako late for that 3, which was a big shot. Trey kept driving and getting fouled, getting the ball there, dumping down to Ballo. So they really had something, and Mike did a good job of just staying with it. And they really have something that was just working right there. We were just fortunate there at the end. Trey Galloway doesn't have the ball in his hands at the end. I mean, let's just be frank about it, because he was making plays. And so now he doesn't have the ball there at the end, and then we were able to get a stop right there, and that was huge.
Matt Painter talking about Trey Galloway and just all the different plays that really swung the game in their favor, but he was very complimentary of Trey Galloway. When the opposing coach says that he is thankful that you didn't have the ball in your hands at the end of the game, I don't care how many turnovers you have. If you're playing that well, like Galloway was, then it means you played great for the first time all year. Trey Galloway was the guy that Mike Woodson has put his faith in repeatedly throughout the entire time that he has been there. He has. And he finally lived up to it. And when it comes to this game, there's 2 things that have to be discussed. Number 1 is Ballo lashing out, walking off the court. We already hit on that. He sucks. He's a bad teammate. Indiana has no hold on him whatsoever. Okay, he is clearly an issue. The other thing is that final possession. Miles Rice races up the floor. Just races up the floor. Takes a tough, contested shot that he maybe got fouled on. And Coach Painter was asked at the end of the game, kind of his perspective on that play. And here's what Purdue's head coach had to say.
You know, that's what you're hoping, like at that point, you know, and he limits himself by coming up the side of the court so that you can load up a little bit, but he didn't get deep enough, you know, with that drive. And so, you know, you're on the move. So, like, you got to be able to guard him and to load up right there. And that was, like, for us, like, our concern in that situation would have been Trey Galloway. Like that was who was torching us. Like he was getting to the rim, he was making plays. He was the guy that was feeling it, and Mbaka was just steady. Like he was steady the whole game. I don't know, he ends up having 25, but he was like consistent. Had a good first half, had a good second half, and he really got it. So the guys that were getting us, don't have the ball in their hands, and so like now we want to keep that, and you're up against the clock. So we were, like I said earlier, we were very fortunate.
There it is again, Coach Painter, right there, head coach at Purdue, making it pretty clear. He's like, look, we were just happy that the two guys that have been torturing us all night didn't have the ball, which, like if you're trying to win a game, it seems like something to be pretty pleased by, talking about Trey Galloway and Mackenzie Mbako not having the ball late, instead the ball being in Miles Rice's hands. And I just a terrible decision from Miles Rice. Did he get fouled? I don't know. I'm going to say he didn't, though, because the referees didn't call it. And I feel like if he did get fouled, then they would have called it. It was just a bad possession. Mike Woodson says in the presser that he tried to call timeout, but if you go back and you watch the video, it looks like he's pushing them up the floor. It doesn't look like he was like yelling at anybody, trying to get a timeout. That's just not what it looked like. But here's Mike Woodson after the game talking about what happened on that final possession.
Couldn't get his attention, and about time he got where he was going. I thought he got fouled on the play. But they didn't make the call, and I don't think that was the difference in the game. The difference in the game was the 20 turnovers that we had. I thought that was huge. And on the road, you can't turn it over like that. And they made us pay for it. They had 26 points off our turnovers. But for the most part, I thought our guys competed, did a hell of a job. But, it's about winning in this league.
Mike Woodson right there said something true at the end. It's about winning. And, shout out to Mike Woodson. He did a whole press conference after that game and didn't mention getting over the hump once. Pretty impressive. But as Coach Woodson said, they didn't lose because of that shot that Miles Rice took. They lost because they turned the basketball over 20 times. Simple as that. I know that there are some fans out there that probably wanted for them to call a timeout, especially after that result. But let me just ask you, do you remember what happened in the Maryland game? I do. Absolute debacle after calling a timeout late. I liked that they played through the chaos in the moment. Okay, they just gave the ball to their point guard. Like, is that really a bad decision? I don't think that it is. He just, Miles Rice then made the bad decision of not giving the ball up and dribbling right into traffic and taking a really tough shot. The ball was just in the wrong person's hands. You would think that Miles Rice had the sense to give the basketball up. I mean, the guy barely played in the second half. He only played 20 minutes compared to his normal 28 minutes. He only played 5 minutes in the second half. He wasn't playing well. And he should have known to give the ball up to somebody else. I do not blame Oumar Ballo for being upset. I'm sure everyone was. But once again, you can't go after your teammate in the huddle like that, especially when that's not the sole reason why you lost. You lost because you turned the basketball over 20 times. You lost because you shot 9 of 16 from the free throw line. Hey, Oumar Ballo, if you don't go 2 of 6 from the line, your team probably has a slightly better chance at winning that game. If you win the rebound battle by more than 6, then you probably win. They should have won the rebounding battle against Purdue by double digits. They had the size advantage at every single position. Every single one. They didn't rebound well in the second half of that game. They finished the game with 12 offensive rebounds. 8 of them came in the first half. They only grabbed 4 offensive rebounds in the second half. And they lost that half. They won the first half 41-37 because they pounded the offensive glass. They go up, they get rebounds, they put it back up and they'd score, or they'd kick it out for 3. And they shot really well from 3. 37% is pretty good. Okay, and ultimately the difference in that game was they didn't have the offensive rebounds to offset the turnovers in the second half. They actually got out-rebounded in the second half by 1. Shouldn't have even been that close. Oumar Ballo should have walked out of that game with 15 rebounds. 15 of them. 15 rebounds. That's how many he should have had because he was far and away the biggest guy on that court. That's why they lost. Too many turnovers. They gave up 26 points off of those 20 turnovers and they didn't rebound the ball well enough, and they missed too many free throws. Also, Trey Kaufman-Wren hit one heck of a shot to finish that game. He dominated. Okay, so Oumar Ballo can throw a hissy fit and get mad at, Miles Rice, all that he wants to. But he was the guy who couldn't stop Trey Kaufman-Renn, who finished the night with 23 points on 10 of 13 shooting from the floor. You realize that with the game on the line, Purdue was like, you know what matchup we like? Trey Kaufman-Renn on Oumar Ballo and just let him go score. And he did. Trey Kaufman-Renn ends up taking a super tough hook shot, 15 feet from the bucket at the free throw line. He took the shot, and I was like, that's not going in. But lo and behold, he hit the shot. Okay? Coach Painter said after the game that whole possession, quote, wasn't clean. And it didn't matter. They still found a way to make a play and win. And this is what separates Purdue from Indiana this year. Indiana, more talented, bigger. They passed the airport test. And if they walked into the airport, you just kind of know that those are basketball players. If Purdue walked into the airport, you'd be like, oh, those might be a bunch of accountants. But this is the difference, right? Like, things have to be perfect for IU for them to win games against good teams. For Purdue, they don't have to be because they're tough and they just find a way to make plays when they need to win games. Indiana doesn't do that. Okay, if things had been perfect for them, they would have won, but they weren't. They turned the ball over too much and they missed way too many free throws. Two things that you can't do when you're trying to beat a team that is better than you, especially when you're trying to beat that team on the road. Was the effort better from IU? Yes, it was, but it wasn't good enough, clearly. And as Mike Woodson said, it's not about being close in this league. It's about winning games in this league. And they once again failed to do that. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas is going to join to talk about Luka Doncic being traded to the Los Angeles Lakers.
The best takes. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. If you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, you probably didn't. I know I didn't. Luka Doncic traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the luckiest franchise in all of sports, the Los Angeles Lakers. Joining me now is RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. RJ, what's going on, man? How are you?
How you doing, man? You're probably doing better than I am.
Actually, so RJ, I grew up a Mavericks fan. I'm wearing my Luka jersey right now. So I when the trade happened, I think I couldn't go to sleep. I was up till after like 2 a.m. just staring at the ceiling. So I'm not doing very great. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I was wide awake when that happened. We had friends over. We were playing a wonderful game of catchphrase, and it was ruined by Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I still can't believe it. What were the calls like on your show this morning? RJ, you there?
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second. Can you repeat that?
What were the calls like on your show this morning?
Dude, they were so electric. Not angry. I'm sorry, not like loud and losing their minds. Just shock, anger, very disappointed, poignantly disappointed in the Mavs. Like they feel like they got their heart ripped out. That this was an affront to them. That Nico Harrison, the GM, and then the Adelson family, who is the new owners, they bought it from Mark Cuban, and Richard Dumont, who is the governor. He's the official governor of the team, as they call it. Like they rolled into town and they just stabbed us in our felt to the fans today. It's a very disappointing morning.
Joined by RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, talking about Luka being traded to the Mavs. Yeah, this is not a great start to being a new owner, just making the fans hate you instantly. How do you know how much he had to do with this trade, or was this mainly Nico?
As far as I know, this was almost like 99.9% Nico. And he had to obviously run it through Richard Dumont, the governor. But the word on the street is that Jason Kidd had no idea this was happening. I don't know that I truly believe that. Like, I find it really hard to believe that you're going to trade a generational superstar and not even give the head coach like a text message like, yeah, man, kind of going to blow your world up here and trade Luka. Like, I don't know. I have a tough time believing that, but that's the company line that they're sending out. This was all Nico, and that he just had to get sign up approval by Richard Dumont. I just don't understand that. If you're a basketball guy and you're the governor of the team, you're Richard Dumont. Like what is, or Patrick Dumont? I don't know why I said Richard. Patrick. Why are you open to this? What made you want to go along with this?
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that they just shipped him out because he was a little overweight and didn't play defense. I mean, we've seen the Pelicans have held on to Zion Williamson since 2018, and he's far worse off than Luka. Like, do you think that there's something deeper going on behind the scenes that just hasn't been revealed yet?
Yes, there is. I know what it is. It's not my place to say. I know there's something that has gone on. Nothing nefarious, nothing illegal, right? But it is something that maybe you can probably piece together, and that is a concern that the Mavs have had. And that is, I think, what really led to this. Like, they were kind of done with it. And my issue with that is you're betting that 24-25 is something that is not going to be any different at 28 or 30, that he's not going to change at all, that his workout habits aren't going to be better, that he's not going to, you know what I mean? Like, look at Joker. Is Joker this bastion of sex appeal, health? Does he have a six-pack? Is he an underwear model, right? Like, he has a body very similar to Luka's. He's fine. He gets away with it. I mean, like, he's learned. He's gotten better over the years. Dirk Nowitzki, when he was here, 24 years old, 25 years old, he wasn't working out the way that he was at 30, 35. His nutrition wasn't what it was at 30, 35. And, you have to bet that Luka is going to go to LA, be under the wing of arguably the greatest specimen of athletic ability we've ever seen, and none of that rub off, and never work out, and never get in shape, and never have a bad diet. I find that very hard to believe.
I think you're exactly right. Joined by RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, talking about Luka being traded to the Lakers, of all places, who just continue to get incredibly lucky when it comes to this kind of stuff, which makes it all the more upsetting. Like, if he got sent to the Nets, I think I would feel a little bit more okay with it. Yeah, it's just incredibly shocking. Do you think Dallas fans were more upset when Schottenheimer got hired by the Cowboys or by this?
Oh, my God, it's not even close. It's not even close. Brian Schottenheimer is a pimple on the butt of this trade. Like, there is Cowboy fans. Cowboy fans have come around to Schottenheimer. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. It is what it is, right? Half the Cowboy fans wanted anybody but McCarthy. So there's that group is already happy. Universally, we took very few calls today that people were actually excited about this trade. A couple thought, you know what, they're going to be better this year. Great, they might be better this year, and they might be better next year. But, you trade young for old. You broke a rule. Rule number 1 in the NBA, never trade young for old. Rule number 2, never trade the bigger superstar in the deal. They broke them both. They broke them both in this trade. You can't justify this. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to some people yesterday who know. And one of the most frustrating parts, I think, of this trade is they didn't shop him around. Like, they didn't call anybody else, and which I think communicates to me that they clearly just wanted Anthony Davis. And the thing that I don't understand is you're trading Luka away because he's out of shape, and his diet and all those things aren't great, but he still plays on average like 65 games a year. Meanwhile, Anthony Davis, for his career, on average, is playing only like 55, which just doesn't, like you said, you traded young for old. You traded a guy who's more of a liability to not play than Luka. But hey, at least you got one first-round pick out of it. Like, why do you think they didn't get more for the second-best basketball player on the planet?
Well, 2 reasons. One, I think they really, truly look at Anthony Davis as damn near his equal. I think they do. I think that they have such a high, Nico and Kidd both are very big on defense. They value defense more than the rest of the NBA does. So I don't think the Mavs think that they got low value for Luka. I think the Mavs think they got fair value. And then the other reason that they didn't get more for him is they didn't shop around. I mean, you have a house. If you have a house, or you're going to sell your house, are you calling one person, your friend? Hey, I'm going to sell my house. Whatever you offer me is what I'm taking. No, you're gonna list it. Like, come on, what are we doing here? I'm still so thrown by this. I mean, I still haven't gotten over the emotional shock. I really haven't.
I haven't either. My wife's had to deal with it. I feel kind of bad about it, but it'll be okay. You mentioned earlier that you had some callers and some people who called in today who are somewhat excited about, maybe the Mavericks will be better this year. What do you think their ceiling is now?
Well, I mean, this year they're a good team. Like, look, I mean, they're going to be a nightmare to deal with defensively. Let's be fair. Defensively, this team is going to be tremendous. Anthony Davis, obviously, Max Christie is a good player. Like they're going to be all right. But you know what? You couldn't have gotten Dalton Connect out of it. Austin Reeves, you could have gotten that along with Anthony Davis. I mean, I'm just like, I think their ceiling is obviously about what it was with Luka this year. I think they're really solid team. They might actually play a little bit faster. But, you've just given up a 10-year window. You traded a 10-year window for a 3-year window. I don't think winning a title is enough. Like, you might have to win 2 championships to satisfy the masses.
I agree because, look, like you mentioned earlier, Luke is about to go hang out with LeBron. As you said, like, 25-year-olds tend to mature a little bit more as they get to 28, 29, 30. And, like, that he's going to figure it out because that's the history of the Lakers. They bring in these stars, and they win titles with them. Like, that's just what happens in LA. So that they're going to win at least one, probably more, because Luka's only 25. He's not even in his freaking prime yet. And I'm with you. Like, they need to win at least one. But I just the other thing that doesn't make any sense to me that I'd like your opinion on. The Mavericks made all these moves in the offseason to like make the team Luka dependent. Like, they go get Najee Marshall and Grimes and guys that can, play defense and shoot threes, the kind of guys that you want around Luka. Why make all those moves if you're just going to trade him halfway through the year?
I don't think they had any intention of trading him at the time. I think they went into the offseason thinking that that he was going to change from what they view as a problem. And he didn't. He played some of this year in the high 260s of weight. And then he hurt. Remember the wrist injury he had earlier in the year? When they sat him down for a little bit, that wasn't because of the wrist. They sat him to get him back in shape. And he came back and he played an amazing stretch of basketball. They went 14-3 in that stretch. And then he gets hurt again with the calf. And this is like another calf injury, like the 4th calf strain he's had. And they viewed that as strictly because of his physique, of his workout habits. And if he does, that happened on Christmas Day. When did Nico say these conversations started? About a week later. So they had no intentions of moving him in the offseason. They thought that he was going to be different. But he wasn't. And, like, again, this is a guy that was hobbled last year and took it to the NBA Finals. What the hell are you doing?
It's a great question. It's a great point. Last question for you, RJ, and I'll let you go. Joined by RJ Choppy of 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, talking about Luka to the Lakers. You can follow him on Twitter at RJ Choppy. What do you think are the chances Luka turns into Joel Embiid in a few years and he's like never playing? What do you think the chances are of that?
If you're Nico, you pray for that. Because if you don't, if that doesn't happen, you don't have a job. You're out. Like, you're going to be gone. You cannot survive. You cannot survive this trade if you, A, don't win a championship with Anthony Davis, and B, Luka goes on to have this great year or great career with the Lakers. You can't survive that. He wasn't going to ask out. He was going to sign the Supermax. Man, like, it is. I don't think. Look, is he going to turn into Joel Embiid? No, I don't. So, Luka's a dog. He is. He's a bad man. He has a weight problem. He ain't got a Zion weight problem. He plays himself into shape. I think one of the things you look at Joker does the same thing. I think there's culturally just a difference between Europeans and, like, Americans. Like, the American basketball players are like, or not even basketball players. Americans are all about their craft. Europeans just aren't like that. It's like, we got a life. I have a life outside of work, and they use it. And then when they're at work, they give it their all, but they got a life outside of work. And Joker does the same thing. Luka does the same thing. It's like, Dirk was like, he was always in shape, but, like, it was never about just basketball. He never wanted to leave. He wasn't jumping around to other teams. He was just, all right, this is where I am. I'm comfortable here. Luka wasn't going anywhere. I think that's kind of a tug of war that some of these NBA GMs have to have with these players. Like, there's a cultural difference between European and American. They're just his. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong. I think that's part of the issue here. They expected him to act and train like, or not even train, but just act like everybody else, and that's just not who he is.
I think that's a great point because, like as you said, like Europeans are just very different from Americans, which has its pros and its cons. Of you don't have to deal with them asking out, but you do have to deal with them showing up a little overweight. And I think that when you have the second best basketball player in the world, you should be okay with that. But what do I know? I just host a radio show in Indianapolis. RJ, thanks for your time, man.
Yep, no problem, brother.
See ya. That is RJ Choppy. You can check him out on Twitter at RJ Choppy. Great guy, does a really good job down there in Dallas, covering the Mavs and the Cowboys and everything else going on with them. When we come back here in about 4 minutes or so, we're going to talk another NBA trade that happened. Not quite as big of a deal. De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs, and then we'll probably wrap it up with a little more stuff on Purdue and IU. All that coming your way here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in. Big thanks to RJ Choppy for joining the show in the last segment. Guy who hosts a show on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. Thanks to him for taking some time to talk about that Luka trade to the Lakers. I just can't believe it. Just incredible. If I hadn't gone to the Purdue IU game over the weekend, I'd be in a rough spot. Speaking of Purdue IU, I was very excited to attend this game. Mackey Arena, you hear a lot about it. Been to a couple games there before Friday night, but never a real like Big Ten matchup, crowd on their feet type of game. And Purdue IU is always that. So I was very excited to go. I've got a short review of it. It got loud. There were some great moments, but I've been in better. Wasn't Bud Walton in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the loudest venue, second loudest venue I've ever been in. I've also been to a football game in Tuscaloosa. Watched Alabama play there, which, it's a football stadium, so it's different. There's, 70,000 people there as opposed to, 20 in Bud Walton and, 12 in Mackey. And I was very impressed. The paint crew, very impressive. Thought it was cool how they had, the student section on both ends of the floor. Really interesting and fun and cool and all those things. But, as loud as Mackey got, like, it just never reached that level of Bud Walton. I think the closest that it got is pretty obvious. Trey Coffin-Wren hits that stupid go-ahead shot with 11 seconds left. A freaking hook shot from the free throw line. Just an absolutely incredible shot. And, he hits it. Crowd erupts. They're going crazy. And in that moment, it did not get as loud as it did in Bud Walton Arena when Coach John Calipari got tossed out of that game 5 years ago. I'll never forget when that happened. He gets tossed. I went deaf for 5 seconds. That's how loud it got in Bud Walton. Purdue got very loud. Very loud. Okay, I am in no way crapping on Mackey Arena. Great environment for college hoops. Tough place to go in and win. But it didn't get so loud that I couldn't hear for 5 seconds. So there's that. Speaking of that shot from Trey Coffin-Wren, what a shot. I mean, he did whatever he wanted that entire game. He hits that, 15-foot hook shot to, for Purdue to ultimately win it. Braden Smith did everything that we thought he'd do and a little bit more. 24 points, 7 assists, six steals, 6 turnovers. John Buzzard asking, John Buzzard, I don't understand your question. He's asking, was that a smaller venue, Mackey or Bud Walton? Bud Walton holds about 20,000 people. Mackey, I believe, is around 12. And so, anyway, Mackey was a bit smaller, which is probably why it wasn't quite as loud as it was in Bud Walton. Anyway, Braden Smith Coffin-Wren hits a super tough shot from the free throw line. Like, if he had taken the shot 5 feet closer, I'd have felt a million times better about it. The fact that he took it from the free throw line, I was a little worried. Like, that's a long way to take a hook shot, but he hit it. He played great. Braden Smith played great. 24 points, 7 assists, 6 steals. He did turn it over 6 times, which is concerning, but they won. Right. And that's ultimately what matters. And they won because Trey Coffin-Wren, he dominated that game. He just absolutely dominated. 23 points, 10 of 13 shooting, made all of his free throws. 3 of 3 from the line. Oumar Ballo can complain and yell at Miles Rice and do all those things, but ultimately, you know what Oumar Ballo didn't do? Stop Trey Coffin-Wren, who he was matched up on several times, and Trey Coffin-Wren was like, great, I'm going to go get a bucket every single time. And he dominated. He went right at Oumar Ballo in the second half. And with the game on the line and a chance to take the lead, everyone in that building, everyone in Mackey Arena should have known where that basketball was going. It was going to Trey Coffin-Wren because he'd only missed 3 shots and he was feeling it. And Coach Painter after the game was asked about that possession, and here's what he had to say.
That wasn't clean. And so, we come off of it, and they stick us, and they play good defense right there. And we wanted to throw back and just go in and have a deep post up, and that wasn't. We were very fortunate there. Trey makes a great play, but give Indiana credit because they pushed him out and made him make a tough, 15-foot jump hook. And he's a good player. Trey's a good player. He needs to come set on a screen so we can play him the whole game. Like, look at the box right there. He's a plus 21 in 26 minutes. Like, he doesn't have those 2 fouls. We don't take him out. How does that adjust the game when we have a place to go with the basketball and make them play? Because the one thing that you want is you want to play off of Braden Smith and you want to play off of Trey Kaufman-Renn. Now it really brings value to other players that can shoot the basketball. But now when you're just playing off of Braden and you don't have a post-up guy there, that gets to be that makes it a lot harder on us.
Matt Painter right there talking about that final possession where they went out of their way to make sure that Trey Kaufman-Renn got a touch. And I'm, good for them. It wasn't clean though. That is the biggest thing that pops out to me in that sentence. It wasn't clean. Trey Kaufman-Renn catches the ball farther from the basket than what they wanted to. Indiana did a really good job of pressing up and didn't matter because this is just who Purdue is. They just find a way to make a play and win games. That's what they do. This is what separates Purdue from Indiana. Indiana probably is more talented. Okay, the difference is that things don't have to be perfect for Purdue because they're tough and they just make tough plays and they consistently make the right choices when they need to win games. Indiana doesn't do that. They mess up coming out of timeouts like they did against Maryland. Their point guard doesn't give the ball up on a night where he just doesn't have it against Purdue. Things just were not perfect for them. And if they aren't, and if things aren't perfect for them, then they lose. That is the reality of Indiana basketball. They are not tough enough to overcome minor details. Meanwhile, Purdue they're tough enough to overcome major mess ups. Purdue was 2 of 13 from 3 on Friday night. 2 of 13. That's incredible. This is the second best 3-point shooting team in the Big Ten by the numbers. They were second behind Iowa at 38% going into that game against Indiana. And they were open. They had good looks from 3. And they only made 2 of them. They had multiple go in and out, but it didn't matter. They still found a way to score 81 points, and it was by playing through Trey Kaufman-Renn on the block. It was by getting to the free throw line. You want to talk about development and guys getting better? How about Fletcher Lawyer taking 7 free throws, going to the rim, getting fouled, scoring easy points at the line? Really impressive from him. I haven't talked about him at all, but he played well. How about Jakari Harris, the freshman off the bench? 9 points, got to the free throw line 4 times. Just did an excellent job of playing downhill. This is what tough teams do when whatever you're good at isn't working. And for Purdue, that's knocking down perimeter shots. You find a way to impact the game in a different manner. And for them, it was getting to the free throw line where they were 21 of 28 from the line to Indiana's 9 of 16. This is what tough teams do. They find a way to win games. And that's what Purdue did. Braden Smith played well. Not his best night, though. 6 turnovers. Come on now. That's way too many. He did play 40 minutes. So I'm, maybe, he just got a little, what's it good? Maybe he's got tired. Maybe he's got mentally fatigued. And that's why he turned it over so many times. But, he was really good. And so was Trey Kaufman-Renn. And, we're going to talk a lot about that final possession today on Dan's show. And I've talked about it a lot on mine, but Indiana lost that game because they turned the ball over 20 times. You can't turn the ball over 20 times against a team that's better than you and beat them. You can't make boneheaded mistakes against teams that are better than you. You can't give up 26 points off of turnovers against teams that are better than you and expect to win. So we can talk about Miles Rice and how dumb that shot was and whether or not he got fouled and all of those things. That's great. We can do that. But ultimately, they lost because Oumar Ballo couldn't stop Trey Kaufman-Renn. They didn't make free throws, and they turned the ball over way too much. Did Miles Rice make a mistake at the end of the game? Absolutely. Absolutely he did. Okay? Should Mike Woodson have called a timeout? A lot of people are going to say yes. I would argue no. I say no because of what happened at the end of that Wisconsin game. Or excuse me, Maryland game. They play Wisconsin this week, tomorrow night, actually. And just not great. Just not a great look at all from Indiana. Miles Rice, man, you got to give the ball up. And Oumar Ballo, you got to find a way to stop Trey Kaufman-Renn. Purdue just gritty, finding a way to get it done. Just a very, very impressive game from them. Also, quick shout out, Big Pasty for IU played 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes, he grabbed 3 rebounds. Maybe he should have played more in the second half, Let him get up there on the glass. Malik Renew only played 8 minutes. He couldn't stay out of foul trouble. He actually fouled out. That didn't help. Just not, tough game for Indiana. They did a lot of things right. Shot it well, 57% from the floor, 37% from 3, but they just couldn't get the stops that they needed. And that falls on Oumar Ballo's shoulders because he didn't protect the rim very well. And, he had 0 blocks. Oumar Ballo, the rim protector, the guy guarding Trey Kaufman-Renn, had 0 blocks on the game. That also had a pretty big impact on the outcome. That's going to do it here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. Myles Garrett has officially requested a trade from the Browns, rightfully so, and we'll cover that. Indiana plays Wisconsin tomorrow night on the road at Wisconsin. They haven't won there in forever, so we'll cover that. Not too sure when Purdue plays again, but I can tell you right now they're probably going to beat whoever they wind up playing. Yeah, they play at Iowa tomorrow night at 7:00 as well. So a lot of college hoops tomorrow. Myles Garrett will start talking Super Bowl, all those fun things. I think Zach Gray might join. He might hop on the show tomorrow. He is a Lakers fan, so it'd be nice to get a Lakers fan's perspective on that game. And, we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens. The Lakers play the Mavericks on February 25th. Get ready for that one because Luka should be back by then, and he's probably going to score 70 points against the Mavs because Luka's an absolute dog, as RJ Choppy said earlier. So once again, thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you again tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.